The level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 397 parts per million. And without stringent restrictions on emissions and widespread adoption of renewable energy sources, it should reach 500 parts per million by 2050, or sooner. These figures are significantly higher than the 350 parts per million level that would raise surface temperatures more than 2 degrees Celsius. And as prominent scientists warned in a landmark Nature publication, threaten ecological life support systems and severely challenge the viability of contemporary human societies. Despite such dire warnings, the expansion of fossil fuel burning activities continues apace, and the crisis we're creating is by no means an act of God. During the years when I worked on Heatwave, scientists, journalists, and policymakers thought about climate change speculatively. The transformation of the Earth's fragile ecological systems was something that might happen in a future we could not fully predict. Now, however, there's overwhelmingly persuasive evidence that global warming is already happening. Consider, for instance, that I am writing these words during the 354th consecutive month in which the average surface temperature exceeded the 20th century norm, which means the last time the Earth had experienced a below-average monthly temperature was 1985. The odds of this hot weather recurring randomly, without an underlying transformation of the climate, are effectively zero. These sustained high temperatures have triggered changes in the ecosystems that sustain human and non-human life, most notably in warming ocean temperatures, rapidly melting polar ice caps, and steadily rising sea levels, which are already encroaching into densely settled areas. If mainstream scientific projections for sea level rise are accurate, hundreds of millions of people will be forced to move from low-lying coastal lands during the next century, and even more will be exposed to violence and deprivation related to food and water shortages. The process through which this conflict and this mass migration happens will become a central object of social science research, for the simple reason that it will also be a central challenge for states and societies across the planet. The changing climate has already made life on Earth more violent and unstable. The World Meteorological Organization reports that extreme weather events occurred nearly 5 times more often between 2000 and 2010 than between 1970 and 1980. With a far greater economic and human toll. Internationally, hurricanes and floods are responsible for most disaster damage, though the young 21st century has already produced a heat wave that killed approximately 70,000 people across Europe in 2003, and another that killed some 50,000 people in Russia in 2010, as well as droughts resulting in food insecurity and political instability in Africa and the Middle East. Hurricanes, which generate the most expensive property damage, as well as the most spectacular images, get the headlines in the United States. We name them, we debate them, we study them, and we remember them for generations. But in most years, heat waves are the nation's most lethal form of extreme weather. They remain silent and invisible killers of silent and invisible people. And we ignore them at our peril. To date, climate scientists have played the leading role in identifying the transformation of the Earth's environment and explaining how human behavior, specifically the production and consumption of carbon-based energy sources, has caused it. But now that we understand so much about the threat of global warming, the most urgent challenges belong to the social sciences. How and when will citizens develop high levels of concern about climate change? And will they collectively demand that political leaders take significant action to address it? What alterations in our social lives will be necessary to mitigate the effects of global warming? What role do cultural values play in our efforts to address the climate crisis before the damage is irreversible? And how will social conditions determine which people and places are most vulnerable to the coming storms? Although these are unmistakably social scientific questions, sociology has been painfully slow to address them. With notable exceptions, sociologists have treated the climate as secondary at best to the key